and then I can always go back and edit this and whatnot. So
Yeah.
All right. Hello.
Hey, hello. So good to see your face.
You too. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Hanging out.
Yeah. I know. I feel like it's been a while since we've recorded an episode. And so
it has been.
We need to like get back on here face to face and
yeah, we got to keep our momentum going.
I know. Well, you started a new job, so right?
Yes. And there's been a lot of changes for you too. Yeah.
We've had some big changes in the last month.
Yeah. And it's just been hard to connect. And I think like a couple of times, like we either had something going on during the day or like just weren't feeling it. So we're like, oh, we'll work on editing or whatever. And I'm supposed to do the show notes and stuff. So like we're working on it, but a little bit of a pause for the last few, 2-3 weeks.
I know. I just got done editing our last episode and I was like, man, even from this last episode, a lot has changed in our lives about things that we were talking about on that episode. It's so funny how quickly things change.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I started a job. Kellen quit his job.
No longer has a job. So yeah, lots of changes here. So
yeah, happens quick.
But we always like to start an episode talking about something new or something exciting that we've recently gotten into or discovered. So tell me what your recent favorite thing is.
Oh my gosh. So I have known about, on Instagram, I started following someone new and I just held off from him for like a long time. I had seen him in some other accounts and stuff and like had stuff, like seen some of his stuff, but he just was kind of like a wild cowboy to me. And I sort of it took me a while. And then I heard him on a podcast. It was actually from the podcast you recommended. I listened to an episode. What is the podcast? It's like What They Aren't Telling You or something like that.
They Aren't Telling You. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was on there and I was like, oh, I like this guy. And so I started following
Marcus recently too.
Was he? Okay. Yeah. So it's Dr. Tommy John. And he had to start a new account. He's been kicked off of Instagram twice now because he says what he wants to say and they're not stopping him. And he literally burned, he says he's not a doctor anymore. He burned his certificates for all of his degrees and stuff. He like says, do not introduce me as doctor anymore. That degree means dick. He's a wild cowboy and but I totally agree with his ideas on health or like on the body, which is basically like, let go of pathology, let go of diagnosis, let go of, your body's not broken. Your body is always trying to either adapt or heal, basically. So whatever the environment's throwing at it, it's adapting or it is healing from whatever damage has been done to it. And so all of these symptoms that we're trying to attack and stuff with Western medicine, even now he's like, even the natural modalities, naturopaths and stuff, they're really just falling into that allopathic model, but using, supplements or other more natural forms of medicine. And instead just working with the body to allow it to heal and do what it's trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes. Oh, and he's just like calling bullshit on everything and everything going on in the world. And he's a cowboy, man. He is. But he's been, I don't know, I'm totally into him right now.
Well, he was cool. Fantastic. When he was a doctor, he was a fantastic doctor and a chiropractor. Mm-hmm. And I knew him from before, like when he was doing chiropractic care and stuff like that. But then his dad, a lot of people know the name Tommy John. They're like, Tommy John, but the Tommy John surgery on your shoulder is named after his dad because he was the first person to ever have that surgery because he was a professional baseball player and then actually come back to play professional baseball again.
Yep. And he played pro ball too, right?
Yeah, he did. And he actually ended up getting a shoulder injury too and having to leave pro baseball too.
Yeah, and so what he started doing, like basically sports medicine. He was working on athletes, professional athletes and stuff. And in the story he told in that podcast episode, basically he saw how chiropractic care was like totally changing how people were healing, and he wanted to get in on it. And so he just he's like, he was probably the only person in his class that had never been adjusted before in like his life, but he started, he went to chiropractic school. So, but he had a really cool story. I totally recommend checking him out. I think he's got an awesome philosophy on how the body works and how we need to kind of, like I said, support the body more than try to fix it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. What about you? You got something you want to share?
Yeah. So even from the last time that we talked about our lives and how we live and our daily routine and stuff like that. So at the beginning of the month that we're currently in, Kellen, my husband, decided to go full carnivore. And we follow a doctor, both Jessica and I do, Dr. Paul Saladino. They call him the Carnivore MD. And I believe it was him who issued the challenge for this month to see if you can go full carnivore for 30 days. And we already were eating pretty much mostly meat, with vegetables thrown in and stuff like that. But Kellen was like, I'm just going to go in and do full carnivore for 30 days. And so we just passed that 30-day mark, and he pretty much, we had friends over one weekend and we went out and he had some fish tacos. So he had like a couple corn tortillas, right? But besides that, he really did a great job and stuck with full carnivore plus avocado. So that was his thing, which Saladino recommends, because sometimes if you're just doing only meat, some people can have get the runs or diarrhea after a couple weeks. And so he's like, just toss a little bit of avocado in there and that'll kind of fix you up, right? And it's a healthy fat. So it's really good for your digestion and stuff too. So he did that. So he just did full carnivore with eggs, beef, pork, and I feel like that was some chicken and then avocado. And that was it. And he did really, really good for those 30 days. The first 2 weeks, he lost 12 pounds.
Oh gosh.
I don't know what he's at. I don't know what he's at right now. At that point, we just got a gym membership in the town that we're in now. Took us a long time to find a gym that jived with us. But so the first 2 weeks, he wasn't even really working out. He was getting ready to leave his job. And so he was super busy, didn't really have much time to work out. And so even without working out, just switching up a few things in his diet, he lost 12 pounds and, is still feeling awesome, feels good. And he just feels good. Like he feels like he has more energy, was sleeping a little bit better. And yeah, it's just been interesting to watch. And so then we started, because it's hard to make meals for like 4 different people in a house. So we started doing the same thing for the most part. I'd give the kids carrot, like a whole organic carrot. That's what would be their vegetable. And they like avocado as well. And then I still make homemade sourdough bread. So that's the only bread that we have in our house, or carbs really that we have in our house right now. From like a bread perspective, is my homemade sourdough. And so then they'll have a little bit of that every now and then, and it's not even every day. But besides that, it's just me. And I've noticed they haven't been one thing I notice, at least for me, is that I'm not snacky. And I don't have any cravings. People are always like, well, what do I do about cravings when I get hungry? I'm like, I don't have cravings anymore. I know people worry about a lot about that. And now having my body go through this and realizing your body is craving things because of what you're putting into it, which we already knew with sugar and stuff. But even though we ate really healthy already, just taking those extra vegetables out or extra carbs, other carbs out that we didn't need, it's been interesting to see how my cravings have totally gone away.
Yeah.
And the kids still ate berries. So raspberries and blueberries. So they did still eat, eat berries.
Well, in carnivore, it still does support, you do eat fruit and berries and things like that. It's just, it's supplemental.
Depending on your version of carnivore. Yeah. If you're going hardcore carnivore, or carnivore light, as I like to call it, which is more my speed, is carnivore light. So
yeah,
berries are totally fine, or honey for a natural sweetener. Is usually pretty okay, with carnivore. But yeah, it was really cool to once Kellen commits to something, he's very good at sticking with it. So it was good. It was good to see him stick with that and see how he felt and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Is he going to continue? Are you going to continue?
I think we're going to continue. Excuse me. Yeah, I think we're going to continue. We just got a pig. So our freezer's half full. We get our cow at the end of this month, I think, or beginning of next month. And so, yeah, I think we're just going to continue with this. The kids seem to be digging it. The hardest part for us is cooking up front. So cooking enough meat up front, because the kids still, they don't snack as much as they were, but they still like get a little hungry between meals sometimes. So having something that's compliant and good for them to have as a snack. So making steak and then chopping it into little chunks that I can give to them either cold or heat up in the microwave. Audrey's been she doesn't really like eggs, but she's been digging the hard boiled eggs lately. So we've been doing a lot of hard boiled eggs for her, regular eggs for Emmett. Some jerky is hard to find that doesn't have a bunch of junk in it. So
I found one though.
Yeah.
I think it's called Paleo Valley or something
Valley.
like
that. Yeah. Paleo Valley is really good. So we like Paleo Valley. They have good jerky. And then smoked salmon, finding a good smoked salmon. And I think Kellen's going to try and smoke his own salmon here pretty soon. So, but yeah, so it's been good. And I think we will continue to eat this way. And to be perfectly honest, it almost feels easier because we don't have as many choices. And it just is like, I don't know. I can just easily grab something. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems easier to me. I think people think it's going to be way harder to do this, but I personally think it is way easier to eat this way.
I could eat a steak for the rest of my life.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing people think is that it's super expensive, and it kind of can be compared to like where you're coming from, maybe.
Depending on what you were eating like before. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're living off of top ramen before, yeah, it's going to change your budget a little bit, but like you eventually, maybe not out the gate, but eventually you get to a place where you kind of fill in your nutrient gaps, and then you're more satiated because you're eating food that is nutrient dense.
That's the thing. I'm not hungry nearly as often as I was before because the food that I'm eating is so much more nutrient dense. I mean, and like I said, we're very pretty healthy, I feel like, compared to like the standard American diet. But just cutting out the vegetables and just really focusing on the meat, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not as hungry as often.
Yeah.
As well. So to me, it's actually probably saving us money. We're not shopping as much, and we don't have to go to the store as often. And so
yeah, and I've been kind of loosely following carnivore myself for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily intentional about it. I just kind of was like, I think I'll start leaning towards carnivore. And I basically started cutting out vegetables.
Yeah.
And what I found is I think I saved because I don't end up wasting produce that goes bad in my fridge.
Right. Exactly. I threw away an entire head of lettuce at the beginning of this month that had never been opened. I was like, God dang it, why'd we do that? Like, stuff would just go bad.
Yeah. So that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so topic of the hour.
Oh man. Topic of the hour.
We're gonna get into.
Oh, hold on, just pause. Come on. Get off the Wi-Fi. Hold on. Dang it. Oh. Okay. So what is our topic today? This is kind of an off-the-cuff conversation that we're gonna
I'm looking forward to this conversation though, because I kind of really need it. This is gonna be like therapy for me. We're gonna talk about how it kind of you feel kind of outcasted living this life. I don't know. It's come up a lot.
What do we mean by this life?
I guess living healthier. I mean, this isn't even just diet wise, but even like non-toxic living, how we see the world politically, our outlooks on COVID. I mean, all the things. I don't know how deep we want to go or where this conversation's going to go, but I mean, like I am feeling all of this so hard right now, and it's hitting me in a lot of places. I mean, it's been something I've dealt with for my whole journey, pretty much. I mean, ever since, even before getting healthier, like I've always been someone that never really drank. So that's what I always kind of compare it to, is like when you go out, I like to go out. I love to go out to the club and dance and stuff, but I like to do it sober. And so, it kind of feels very similar in that when you go out with people who are drinking, they like really, really try to influence you to drink with them. Because it's so uncomfortable for them.
Right. Which is such a funny thing. Like when you think about it, it's like, why would something like that make other people uncomfortable? But it truly does. It makes them feel weird. And I don't know why that is. But
I think it's having to look at your own shadow. And so, whatever guilt or shame that you carry with drinking when you go out, I think it's projected, and you want that or they feel judged. They think that because I'm not drinking, I think you're less or something like that. Or they think I'm not having fun. It's like, well, if you just leave me alone about drinking and quit trying to get me to do it with you, you wouldn't even know I was sober. Like, quite honestly.
Right. And I think a lot of it is that judgment too. I think that people think if you're not drinking, you're judging them for drinking. And that's not it at all.
No.
It's just a personal choice.
And it's the same thing applies to healthy living. I think what sometimes can easily come across as judgment is not intended that way. It is caring. I try to tread very carefully about talking or trying to have some positive influence on somebody's lifestyle. For the most part, I just try to let people live however they're living. And if they ask for advice, I give them the advice. But it is hard when you have people you care about doing things that are not good for them. And you kind of can, I don't know, I know you experience this too, but I'll like connect dots. I'm like, okay, you feel like crap. You're depressed and tired and your digestion sucks, but you're going to go to the store and buy soda and load up on carbs and, and I'm just like, I just want to help you.
I know. Right. And I think it's that, and I think it's getting people to like, look at you as somebody, I have friends that are better about it now, looking to me for like advice on different things. Do they always take it? No. But I also think that it's hard for people to make changes. Not only is it, number one, hard for people to look in the mirror and be like, I've been probably doing this wrong for a while. So you have to look internally and in the mirror and take ownership of that. But it is hard to make lifestyle changes like that, especially when you've been eating a certain way or living a certain way for a very long time. It takes a lot of effort and it's hard.
It is. And even still now, even still now, like I am trying to make more changes to how I'm living as I continue to learn new things and have different perspective or want to try different things. Making that leap is really, really hard to change how you've currently been living and adjusting pretty much your entire lifestyle. It's very hard. And I am very empathetic to that. But I also, sometimes people need to get a little bit of a slap in the face, I think, they
need a hard dose of reality. And I think the sad thing, and the thing that makes me really sad, is that a lot of times that hard dose of reality is like some kind of serious illness. It could be a heart attack, or it could be heart surgery. It could be, you get diagnosed with like a colitis or Crohn's or something like that. Like, that's a hard thing. Those are pretty tough things to have to deal with. And it's having to accept the fact that like, man, if I had changed something in my life 10 years ago or 5 years ago, maybe this wouldn't have happened to me and I wouldn't be going through this now.
That's even if they do realize that they could have had a different outcome. And that's a hard thing to watch too.
True. Yep.
I think a lot of people it's really easy to accept, oh, this is what's happened to me, instead of taking that ownership of, I made choices that got me here,
Right.
But also just realizing that we do have a lot more power over our health than what we are generally led to believe. Everybody's just like, oh, it's my genes, and it's like, no, sorry, it's not. It's
right.
Our bodies are very intelligent, and we are not meant to be in a diseased state. it's your body's trying to do something to set things right. So, but it's a switch of mindset, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, right? Like we want to kind of try and help influence that mindset and open people's eyes to maybe a different way of doing things, so that maybe they can have a healthier and happier life.
Agree. I think a funny thing for me is when people are like, I could never do that. When they say that never word, I could never do whatever it is, right? I could never only eat meat. I could never cut out carbs. I could never this. It's like, okay, number one, yes, you could. Don't say that. Number two, you're just already giving up before you're even trying. By putting that in your mind, you're saying, I could never do this. You're already triggering your body into a mode of, okay, yep, you're right. I can't ever do this. And I'm not even going to try.
Well, and what I always say to that is, where my mind goes is, I'll tell you straight up right now, I am not disciplined at all. I'm not. I have zero discipline. But like, when you make a change, if you just do it for like 30 days, especially nutrition wise, you cut something out. Like if you take, this is why I don't like cheat meals. I've probably talked about this before, but like if you commit to it for like 30 days, you're a literal like addiction to those types of foods, especially like sugars and stuff. They start to go away.
They do.
And so, you have to be really diligent for a period of time, but you literally just have to make the choice. And once you make the choice, like I no longer see junk food as food. Like it's a shift of mindset, and it only happens when you decide to make the change and stick with it for a period of time. And then it sets in, and like, you can do it. If I can do it, trust me, you can do it. I am by no means special at all when it comes to this stuff.
Let me tell a story.
It's just a value of mine.
Oh, great. Let me tell a story. So when Jessica and I were kids, we would go to, and I maybe have said this on other podcasts before, we would go to Jessica's house for all the treats. Jess was so picky. She was the pickiest child. And she always would eat like mac and cheese or like Gushers. I just remember you always had Gushers at your house, or fruit snacks or fruit roll-ups or all that kind of stuff. And she was so picky. And I was picky too. But my mom wouldn't. My parents are very, very cheap and very thrifty. They're very thrifty. And so we never got anything like that in our house, right? We got like generic brand Cheerios. And so it's like we would go to Jess's house to get all the goodies and the treats and stuff. And so she especially started out like as somebody who was living a super unhealthy lifestyle as a child, but like to see where she is now and the discipline, and like she's saying, like you're saying, like she's saying, like you're saying, you're still not perfect at it. And, it's taken you this long, 30 years, to go through these changes and all this kind of stuff and learn and grow and put in the time. And so I think sometimes people will think like, I do it and that's it. It's like, it's an evolving process. We're always learning more. What we knew 20 years ago or 30 years ago in health is not what we know now about health. And so I think that we're just always learning and growing. And so I think you're super right when you say, I'm not perfect, because nobody is. And I sometimes worry that people think, well, if I'm not perfect, I'm failing and I'm just going to give up. It's like, no, we all make mistakes. We all aren't perfect. And we all, have 2 glasses of wine when I only wanted to have one, or 2 margaritas when I only wanted to have one, like, oh, well, I'm not going to beat myself up and just give up on everything. I think about that with smokers a lot. My parents were smokers and they would try to quit smoking all the time. And then something would happen, something stressful, especially like for my mom, and she would start smoking again. And then she'd be like, oh, whatever, I'm just giving up. And I'm like, no, don't, just because you had one cigarette, like, don't let that derail you. That should not derail your life and change all those things. Like, just get back on it and start again. But I think it's getting into that mindset of understanding that just because you cheat once or something happens one time, that doesn't derail the entire process for you.
Yeah. It's just get back on a lot faster, like realize, oh, I screwed up, get back. And I always think like, think about how you feel when you do that. Like, do you feel good about it? If you don't, like, realize like you can make that adjustment and get back on track. And we all have our different moments and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, it's been this whole, as far as like not fitting in with this lifestyle, it's just, there's so many aspects of it that's been challenging, from even just when I first really started getting into this, with my daughter, and my mom was the one that was taking care of Charlie until she was 2 years old and she went to daycare. But like I mean, she was like, I'm sure she thought I was crazy.
Right.
Well, I mean, she did. She thought I was nuts for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But now, years down the road, she is like one of my biggest cheerleaders. Now that she sees the difference that it's made for Charlie, and she's hearing more and more about sort of the healthy lifestyle and the impacts that it has. Like she is a becoming more and more of a believer of the impact of a healthy lifestyle and eating a certain way. And so, that exposure has helped her a lot in being more accepting, but not everybody's getting that exposure. And
Right.
so, there's a lot of my friends that still don't really even know how I eat and live. And it's hard. Like, I just recently went and met up with a friend and caught up with her. I hadn't seen her for a while. And before that, we were trying to make plans, and she's like, "You want to go get manicures, pedicures?" I was like, "Can we go for a walk?" And, because I don't want to have like the chemicals and stuff from getting my nails done. And I've never really been one for doing all that anyways. And then, and then we finally decide to go out to lunch. And I was so excited because we were going to go get sushi. I was like, sweet, I can just get some like sashimi and I'll be good. And then the place was closed and we end up at a Thai place. And I'm like, just kind of picking around and eating like, the meat and stuff. And she orders like, egg rolls or whatever. And I'm like, she's like, eat some. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just really, really hard. Like, you want to be part of the social activity still, but I'll bring my food to a lot of places, my own food, or eat before I go somewhere. But you still kind of feel like, and I have no problem being the oddball, which is probably part of the reason why I've survived this long, is I have no problem being sort of the weirdo in the group. But it's still hard. Like, you want to be able to go to these social activities and stuff and be part of eating out and those things. So I still do them, but it's getting harder the more and more I am really getting into like carnivore, and now I'm starting to kind of get into primal. It's just it gets challenging in those social settings.
Yeah.
Where, and you kind of feel like the a-hole in the group, where they're like, here, have some. I'm like, that's okay. It's like, oh, our food's not good enough for you. And it's like, that's not what I'm trying to say, but like, it's kind of true.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's hard too. I think it's a cross between they want to include you, right? And they want you to feel included and stuff like that. But then they shouldn't also feel bad because you eat a certain way. It's like, and you're not trying to make them feel bad. You're just like, this is how I'm eating, and it's just like people who have, and it's funny, it seems like if you said, oh, I have colitis or Crohn's disease, if you say I have Crohn's disease, so I can't eat this, they're like, oh, okay. So it's like, if you say like, I have this, I can't do this, people are like, oh, okay, I get it. But if you just make the choice to eat this way, they think you're weird.
Yeah. I ran into it a lot in the work setting. They would, one of my managers that I actually liked, he would go around every, about once a month, he would buy ice cream for everybody and go walking around the office handing ice cream to people. And he's like, come on, Jessica, it's grass-fed, free-range chocolate. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm good, thank you. And or when it came around to my birthday and they wanted to get a cake or whatever, I appreciated it, like they tried to get like healthier foods, and I'm like, this isn't for me, like this is for everybody else. Like, you don't need to do anything special for me. I don't need to eat it, just do it for everybody else. Like, we can have the fun office potluck thing going on, but don't try to cater to me. That's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I want everybody to have a good time and eat what they want to eat. I'm just not going to. And it doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. But it's really hard to convey that, you know?
Yes.
And I don't know, and to not come off as seeming to think you're like better. And what happens is you feel that, you kind of feel, and I don't know if it's me projecting that or people actually feel that way, but what I end up doing is then compromising my own values. Like, you know, when I went out to lunch with that friend, I ended up eating one of the fried egg rolls or whatever. It was delicious. So, I mean, and I didn't feel terrible afterwards or anything, but at the same time, it was a compromise of my own sort of values that I've set for myself. And so it's like cheating on yourself, you know,
I do that all the time.
to be able to fit in. Yep. And I don't like that feeling, you know?
Yep. I do it all the time. And I'm the worst about succumbing to that kind of stuff. You know, it's like the last time we go to a place, a vacation spot that has a lot of wineries here in Washington, and we go with a bunch of friends all the time, and we always go wine tasting. And last time we went, I was like, I'm not going to really drink. You know, we had kind of stopped drinking a lot, really very much. I mean, I'd still have a margarita every now and then or a glass of wine, but it's like maybe once or twice a month, and that was it. And so I was like, I'm not going to drink very much, everything. But then you get around people and then they're handing you wine. And I'm like, I feel bad. I feel guilty. It's like, I feel guilty. And I'm like, why do I feel guilty? Because I am making this choice, right? And I would had more wine than I had wanted to, you know, and we're going again in a couple weeks. And I'm like, gosh, dang it, Tiffany, you've got to stick to your guns. It's hard because it's the social aspect and all that kind of stuff too. And I'm like, I've got to stick to my guns and just be like, I'm good, you know, I'm okay. And you know, I'll bring my own sparkling water or whatever, you know, something else so that, you know, I'm somewhat included in the merriment and all that kind of stuff. And they don't feel like, you know, because I have some friends that are they're really pressury about it too. You know, they're really, really get pressury about it. And so it's really hard to say no to that kind of thing. So I'll be curious to see how I do while we're there.
Yeah. I really makes you realize, like, you know, it's that, I call myself a like recovering people pleaser, you know, setting those boundaries. And this applies to all aspects of life. I mean, it really comes up in like dating or other relationships and things like that. You know, romantic relationships, but even like just family or friends or whatever, having boundaries and really respecting yourself to hold those boundaries, and not having that, they say like people pleasing is a trauma response, basically, you know, so trying to maintain the peace, so that you don't have, you know, something, you know, bad conflict or whatever. And so I don't know, it's really trying to, be aware. It's an ongoing thing for me to work on that boundary setting and, you know, be respectful, but also like hold my own values and stuff. It's hard.
It is. It's really hard.
Yeah. Speaking of dating, oh my gosh. So this is the other aspect that's been killing me lately. Like, I've been single for a hot minute now, and it's like every day more seems like I'm just going to be like alone for the rest of my life.
Oh no.
But I'm just like, I almost texted you, like, I think I started drafting a text to you like 3 different times last night. Like, where can I find real men? Like, I just, like, I'm on like a dating app again. I downloaded it again. We'll see how long it lasts this time. I went on a date a couple days ago. But it's just like, where I see the men on Instagram that I follow that are like carnivores and stuff, I'm like, where are you? Can we have, I literally,
you're on the wrong side of the mountains, Jessica. You got to come to the eastern side of the mountains.
I do. I really, really do. I almost started to text that to you too. I'm like, I need to come over and go to the gym with you, because where are these men at?
They're at my gym.
Yeah. I just like, they just don't exist over here. And and I literally, oh my gosh, you'll laugh. I literally joined. I was like, I wonder if there's like a Facebook dating group, because if there's not, I'm creating one. And like I found this it's like meat carnivore meetup or something like that, and meat spelled like MEAT, but it's like dating for carnivores or whatever. There's like 4,000 people in there. But I'm like, as soon as I get in there, I'm like, this is weird. I need to go. Like,
so it wasn't what you thought it would be.
well, I mean, it was totally fine, but again, like, are you really gonna, like, out of 4,000 people around the world, there's a handful in the like Seattle area. Am I really going to like post a picture of myself in a Facebook group of a small group of people and be like, hey, let's go out? Like, it's just weird. And
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm like, okay, how the hell am I supposed to meet? I'm like, I literally do need to like move to Texas or something, because where are
You're
the
not going to
people
find
that,
them in Seattle.
no,
They're probably there. They're just hiding or something.
it's just very few and far between, because we're such a liberal state
Right.
on this side. And I mean, this is the other top part of this conversation, is the politics and stuff like that. But like, my politics have shifted. I used to lean very, I hate to say liberal, but like, I definitely leaned that way. I don't follow a political party, especially now. But like, the way my outlook on politics and stuff has shifted, it really has gotten me feeling very outcasted or like just different from the type of people that I would have associated with before. And so to find someone that really, really gets the whole thing, that we would, I don't know, it's just hard. They're out there because I'm friends with some of them on Insta, or I follow them on Instagram, but of course they already are in relationships, or, it's not like I'm going to like DM them and be like, hey, how you doing? But
Right.
like, to find these people in real life just seems so impossible right now.
It's definitely a hard time. I think it seems like everything is so polarizing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is so polarizing. And so it's trying to find like where you belong or find like-minded people. And it's funny that you and I have continued to kind of track the same. It's like we were both very super not very healthy kids, and then we kind of started a health journey, and then we were very, very, very pretty left, both of us, with politics, and then we've kind of gone more towards the middle, maybe right a little bit, and it's just, you're the only person who I feel like I've continued to track with on so many different things,
Yep.
but it's a tough time to try to meet people. So I feel for you. We'll find you
Yeah.
some.
I'm so glad that like you and Kellen have maintained, like, you guys have grown to, together over all of these things. And it's cool to see your guys' relationship. And you guys are you have that very intellectual, but like, I don't know, you guys have great dialogue and stuff. I don't know.
Very similar.
You're lucky to have Kellen. And I keep talking about men. Like, I want a manly man. Like, I didn't for a minute there, it was like I was falling into that trap of and I still think it's important to have someone that you could have intimate conversations with. But I don't need a girlfriend. Like, I for once, like, I want a man that like takes care of me. Like,
Right.
like, and to really, I really, really am starting to fall into that. I truly believe that a balanced relationship has a masculine and a feminine, and you fill those roles. Now, I'm not saying like, you have to be a homemaker, like, and all that stuff. But I do think there's some truth to that. Like, there's a role that fits the feminine, and there's a reason that women culturally do certain things, and men are the hunters and the ones that provide. And so, like, really finding someone nowadays that understands that, and I don't know, it's just it's tough. I don't know.
It is hard. Kellen's definitely like a very like alpha male type person. You know, he's a big guy and he's a very asserting personality, but he's also like a very relatable person. You know, he's funny, super relatable, which is why everybody that's worked for him has loved him, you know. Yep. But I agree. It's funny. I was listening to a podcast, Ben Greenfield, he lives here in Spokane. I was listening to his podcast with a friend of his who's a dermatologist, and he was actually talking the other day, and I might send Kellen to him. It's kind of funny because he was talking, actually saying that Kellen is like, has like the male pattern baldness going, you know, right? Like balding and, you know, like so many guys get. And he was actually saying that men that have more testosterone typically lose their hair first. So I was like, or more bald or that sort of thing. I was like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, a lot of the men I know that have had like baldness or balding, you know, I was like, yeah, they're pretty like your alpha type males. And
yeah, that's interesting.
Into the hunting and that sort of thing. And so it was just really interesting to hear that. But
yeah, that is interesting.
It's a backlash for people from that, but whatever. It's our podcast.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, there's those aspects, the dating, the politics, and unfortunately nowadays, like you said, it's so polarized that you really can't have these conversations. It's really, really hard. And so this has come into some of my hardest relationship issues, which is with my own family. It's really, really hit close to home and come between me and my one sister, who I've always been very close to, with our difference in opinion on all the coronavirus stuff. So that's been very hard to go through, that you let effectively a difference in politics come between your relationship with someone that you care deeply about is really, really heartbreaking. And that's the world that we're kind of creating, or it's what the current narrative, and I see politics so much more for what it is, which just is a load of BS. They're trying to push agendas on us, and people just are falling for it. And that
still shocks me. It still shocks me how easily people fall for it. And I've been thinking about asking the question of where people get their news. You know, where do you get your news? Because I mean, so many people are still just right in line with the narrative and what they're trying to do. And, oh, yep, agree with this, agree. And I'm like, in your mind, does this seem a little off to you? And if you have that moment of like, this seems kind of off, follow that moment. Because if it seems off to you, then it probably is. Like, follow your intuition, you know? And I feel like so many people are like, well, they're telling me, you know, the government's saying that this is good, so it's okay, it's good. It's like, is it?
Yeah.
Your history isn't super stellar.
I got into this. I try to not get into the debates anymore on Facebook, but I did end up commenting on my aunt's post last week about how it was a repost of something to the nature of, do you really know how to research? You keep saying you research things, but do you really know how to research? Because you have to do this, and this. No, leave it to the professionals. Go get vaccinated, basically. And it was like, okay. So there's a lot of conflicting advice out there about what, you know, how safe these are. So this goes back to the whole like science is settled thing.
Right.
And I ended up in this whole, and I ended up in actually a debate, basically going back and forth with my cousin's wife. And it was just, you know, she was using, basically saying like, the numbers tell the story, and she gave me some weird number of like 87 deaths from the vaccine or something. I'm like, well, you should look at VAERS. And
right. So have you gone into VAERS to look at all? And if you're listening to this and you don't know what VAERS is, it's basically the vaccine reporting website that the government created to report any adverse effects from any vaccinations. And really, I think it's less than 10% of adverse effects get reported into VAERS.
Actually, I think the Harvard study came up with it being a 1%.
1%. I know I've heard both. I've heard 1%, which is what I've thought for a long time. And then I heard somebody else say like 10%. So, but 1% is what I've heard for the longest time.
Yeah. I'm going to have to pull up the Harvard study again to say for sure. But bottom line is it's grossly reported.
Grossly underreported.
And And so surprisingly though, she actually did go and pull up VAERS and look into the numbers, and she came back and and she said the number, she's, gave the valid like VAERS numbers and stuff. And I was like, I also just want to say, just to point out that it is known that it's grossly underreported in VAERS. And my aunt's like, you can't keep moving the goalpost. I'm like, I didn't move the goalpost. That's just the stats that are available.
Yeah.
I'm just
You want to talk about who's moving the goalpost? My Atlanta.
Right. But that's the thing, is like you end up in these conversations where people can't see their own crap, and like I know where they're coming from, and I can see where they've been fed information so that they think a certain way, but it's also obvious that they have not listened to the other side at all. So how are you making informed decisions? And how are you telling other people what they should do based on, you say, research that was done by, scientists and doctors that have said that this is completely safe? How could it was released in matters of months. Like we literally have zero long-term studies on this. Zero.
Don't forget, one of those doctors has a patent on all of this stuff too.
Yeah.
So they get, compensated.
They're not in bed with each other at all. No.
Not at all. Yeah, and I can say this because I was on the other side of this for a very long time. Jessica was way ahead of me when it comes to this kind of stuff. It wasn't until, I don't know, 3 years ago that I started to ask more questions about this kind of stuff. And this is vaccines are we will do another podcast about vaccines in general. But the fact that people just don't even ask questions when they don't even realize the fact that the minute the state of emergency or emergency use goes away, they say, okay, we're no longer in a pandemic. The minute they stop that, this vaccines have to stop, because they are not FDA approved. They are only approved under the emergency use authorization. So the minute that goes away, right? And people don't think about that. The minute that goes away, the vaccines have to stop. So you wonder why the government is still keeping us in this pandemic state of emergency, right? Because it hasn't been approved, because the trials will not be done for at least another couple years. And the fact that they actually opened up the trials to the people that were in the placebo group. They basically said, okay, you can get the vaccine if you were in the placebo group, and you can get the vaccine if you choose to. Where does your test group go? Where does your other group go? They don't have that anymore, because they let those people get the vaccine. So you don't have that group of people anymore to look at. And to me, that's terrible. To me, the fact that has not been talked about, that they opened up the blind, whatever, I don't even know what they call it, but basically revealed like who had gotten the vaccine and who hadn't, and then let those people get it. Like that to me is like, you just completely.
The study's broken now, but even at that, they got rid of a lot of the people that were a part of the study anyways. It just, to say that you should just blindly trust the researchers and what the study came out to say without looking yourself is just foolish. It's pure foolishness.
It just shows you how much trust we've put into doctors, though, right? People look at doctors, and this one I was listening to a podcast about this too. They're talking about, you wonder why doctors wear white lab coats, and you wonder why it has doctor in their title, and it's like, because it commands authority. So we look to these people like they are the expert on these things, when in reality, your pediatrician or your general practitioner knows almost nothing about vaccines and what is in them. They're not taught that in school. They're taught what the schedule is and what to give, but they're not taught all the ingredients and what the possible side effects are. They just give you a sheet of paper and say, okay, I'm giving you a shot. And nobody.
And that sheet of paper, I mean, doesn't tell you anything about what might happen.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is and people don't realize that the minute they take this vaccine, they're entering themselves into this trial, because it's not approved yet, and they're not getting informed consent. And now the fact that I could go on, we could go on. Now the fact that colleges are starting to say that they're going to mandate it. Washington State University just came out and said fall semester they're going to mandate it. Gonzaga here in Spokane is talking about possibly mandating it. And I'm like, you can't. How can you mandate an experiment? Like that doesn't seem. That's not right.
No, it's not. But people are just wildly accepting it under this acceptance, or I don't even think it's been said, but like people widely believe that this vaccine is supposed to protect you, and it's not. It it is designed, the study came out and said that it reduces symptoms in like 94% of people.
Yeah.
Like
between
it
94
was
and
not
96, depending on which shot you get.
mhm. And that's just reducing symptoms,
Yep. It
or
doesn't stop you from
the
spreading
severity
it.
of symptoms.
Yeah.
No. And so, but people just have it in their head that because they have the vaccine, that they are then protected and they're protecting other people from getting it. It's like, no, that's not how that works.
Like that's why they make you still wear masks. Like
Uh,
because like it's like, and they don't put two and two together. They don't put the fact that, oh, I got the vaccine, I think I'm now protected and protecting others, but I still have to wear a mask. It's like they're not putting two and two together, that the vaccine just lowers my symptoms. Like I could
mhm.
still be spreading it possibly to people.
Yeah. So it's just, but to have that conversation in person with somebody that thinks so strongly on that side, and I'll be honest, I think strongly on my side,
Right.
but if you can have a rational conversation about it, I mean, so you mentioned how I was ahead of you on the vaccine conversation. Do you remember when we had our debate on Facebook too? That's really hard. Tiffany has been my best friend forever, and she had posted something on Facebook, and it was kind of under that sort of, everybody needs to get vaccinated. It's for public health. And I said a couple things to the effect of like, pointing out, I kind of just wanted to put a face. I used to do this. I wanted to put a face to the other side of the conversation.
Right.
So to be close to you and be able to say, hey, there's a reason other people aren't getting vaccinated. And I don't know if that had any influence on you starting to ask questions. But yeah, shortly thereafter, you did start to kind of like look into things more. And so to be able to have that sort of civil dialogue and be able to have those debates is so important. And it just is almost impossible to have anymore. And I think that is actually calculated by the leaders the world leaders. Basically, they are trying to manipulate people to divide them and to then coerce the large majority of people to follow this. And it's working. I mean, I'm not going to fall for it, but I am witnessing my own family turn on each other. I went for months without seeing anybody in my family except for my mom, and I finally saw my oldest sister and her daughter. Her daughter and my daughter are close in age, and they love to play with each other, and they finally got to see each other for the first time since Christmas, so like 4 months, almost 5 months. And so we finally got to see each other. But I haven't seen my other sister. I basically am not talking to her anymore because of she basically said I was throwing she comes from the medical field, so she takes some things very personally.
Right. And the more allopathic medical field, right? There's different medical
She's in
fields.
radiology, or her husband's a radiologist. And so she basically flat out told me that she had kind of pulled away from me because of the things I was saying on Instagram and Facebook, and claiming that I had like thrown medical people under the bus. And like, I even went back through my history, and I hadn't. I have a differing outlook on how things should be handled. But for that to make you pull away from my relationship with you is, I could take the same outlook on her. I could say, you're trying to infringe upon my freedoms and right for medical choice. And I could get mad at her for having the opinion that we should all be vaccinated and be told to get vaccinated and have vaccine passports and be tracked by the government and all that stuff. I could get mad at you for that, but I'm not. I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree with you. We can not talk about it, but still have our relationship. But it wasn't. So it kind of came to a head, and it's very unfortunate, and maybe someday it'll come back around. But to let politics and differences of opinions on things like this to come between a very valuable relationship is just, And this is happening everywhere.
Yep.
And not just in like the vaccine conversation, but the Black Lives Matter conversation is very there's a lot of tension in there. And I think now that I've kind of seen both sides of the perspective on even that conversation, I've shifted my kind of outlook on that and started to see that too as like a political thing. It's a political ploy.
Exactly.
And I don't see it for what I used to see it as, which was a very valuable political movement.
Yep.
I think of it as a load of BS kind of, you know. But that's a hard thing to say. I mean, like, hopefully I don't piss people off listening to our podcast. But to start really hearing both sides and understanding where people are coming from, in that if you know someone and know that they are well-intentioned, and you can try and, you know, help them see another perspective, but ultimately realizing like that's their perspective. And like, are you still someone I love and care about? And on other fronts, do we still care about each other? Yeah, you know, and so we can continue to have these conversations. But as soon as you stop having those conversations, you're done, you know. We're not going to have any progress.
I think nowadays too, people just put themselves in echo chambers, right? Excuse me. Excuse me. Especially if you're getting all your news off of like Facebook or somewhere that censors what's put on there. You're just putting yourself in an echo chamber and you're reinforcing your opinions, you know. It's like people that say, oh, I do listen to the news and I do a lot of research. It's like, but you're only researching things to it's the confirmation bias to confirm what you think. And that's what it did for me. And we could talk about this in our vaccine conversation, but that's what it did for me, is that I was like, okay, I need to research the other side with an open mind and think and with the fact, okay, what if this person is correct, instead of just trying to find things. And I've shared about this on Facebook before. Instead of just trying to find things that confirm my opinion, I was trying to find things that went against my opinion and my beliefs, because to me, that's true research. And that's how you get out of the confirmation bias. And once I was able to find that and started looking into that and researching that, I was like, wow, okay. And then I started digging more, and it's using the right search engines too. Google's the worst search engine ever, because it's just like biased too. You got to use something like DuckDuckGo that doesn't censor any of the stuff that comes into your search. And I think that's political too. I think that, you know, when all of this stuff started happening around the Black Lives Matter thing, I was all down with this. And I was like, yes, we need to make changes. And my uncle was a commander, you know, and had retired a few years before from the police force. And so I was talking to him about it. And when I started talking to him about it, I was like, okay. So I started looking into things a little bit more. And then when my friends, you know, started apologizing for their whiteness, like that was a thing for me. I was like, you're apologizing for the color of your skin. I was like, you're 35 years old. Like, what's happening here? This isn't 5 steps forward. This is like 30 steps backwards.
Yeah, going in the wrong direction.
We're going the wrong direction. And I just feel like they're trying to make it more polarizing and worse. And then I go back and I listen to old clips from 10, 20 years ago from like a Morgan Freeman or things from Martin Luther King Jr. and things that they said. And I was like, this isn't what they wanted. This isn't what, like, Morgan Freeman, who I look at as an intelligent Black man, he wouldn't say, I don't know what he would say now. You know, a lot of celebrities get forced into saying things nowadays, but 10, 20 years ago, he said the exact opposite of what Black Lives Matter is saying right now. And so it's just taking your own ego out of it. I always say we have to get our ego out of it, you know, because we think we are right. And until you look at the other side and get your ego out of it and say, okay, what if I am wrong? What if I had this wrong? And you start to really see if you can find stuff to disprove your bias, then you'll maybe be able to really give me a true argument or a true, you know, opinion about what you believe. But if you're just in your own echo chamber and just doing the research to confirm what you believe, then I'm not even gonna talk to you about it, because you're never gonna be willing to look at my side of things.
Yeah. And just to say, like, we're all guilty of
Oh,
that
for sure.
that bias. I mean, you want to confirm that you are right. It's just human nature. It's really hard to admit that you were wrong, or to see maybe where you've been wrong for a long time.
This
But
goes
it
back to
is.
the food conversation too, right? We were talking about at the beginning.
Mhm,
It's like people don't want to admit that they've been eating like shit for 30 years,
mhm,
and they thought they were making healthy choices by eating low fat this, or this only has, however many points or whatever, system they're
mhm.
following, like, but it's still not good and healthy food. People don't want to admit that they've been making bad choices. It's hard. It's
Yeah,
hard to admit you're wrong.
it is. The other thing you mentioned earlier that I'm going to come back to too is that intuition.
Mhm.
A lot of people's intuition is broken, and I blame the world that we live in today. You connect with your intuition by the more healthy you are, the more connected you will be with your intuition. And
Agree.
I'm still working towards connecting with that intuition, that gut feeling. But that's really what has led me. It's like really tap into what logically makes sense. You can do all the research in the world, but those studies can be very, very biased. They can be bought and paid for. They can just be confirming what the hypothesis that they want. So digging into those and really looking at exactly how a study was conducted, finding the holes in it.
Who was
Um,
funding it, who funded that
who,
study, and then digging
mhm,
into who funded that study, or who that company is, because a lot of times they'll hide, like the sugar
mhm,
industry will hide behind a name that sounds good, but it's not. It's
mhm.
just the sugar industry.
Or finding who that doctor or whoever performs the study, who they are affiliated with, all that stuff. And that's really hard to dig into all of that.
It
So at
takes a
the
lot
end
of
of the day,
time.
sometimes you just need to go, what really makes sense here? Who is really going to benefit from this saying that this is good or bad? And why are they saying that? And really tapping into, oh, and a lot, I would say one of the things that really helped me really open my eyes on the political spectrum of things is paying attention to how headlines are worded. It
Yes,
can
that's
you can real
huge.
you can really see the manipulation in them and how they want you to think,
Hmm.
in the way that they word things. Um, just a headline says so much, and you can just see the BS written right into it. And they're trying to push a thought that they want you to have. And you can see, and I'm telling you, this isn't even just headlines and stories. Memes. Start paying attention to memes. I love memes. They crack me up. But you know
Yeah.
what? They have had, that's probably one of the best things that they have ever done to try and influence the whatever agenda that they have,
Yeah.
is you can tap into people's sense of humor, and it can come across as just being funny and something that, but it gets shared widespread,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden everybody starts to think they know something about something.
Yeah.
um, you can see if you start paying attention to these shifts or new terminology that comes out, that all of a sudden everyone's using the same terminology about something. It all, these things are created.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them, if you really dig deep into it, and we could go down a rabbit hole with this, a lot of them are created by Russia and China.
Yeah.
A lot of them are created, they have people here in the States that are working for the governments there. And a lot of them a lot of these memes are created by them because they're the ones who are wanting to divide us, because China wants to be the superpower and they're this close. Like they're so close, that's a whole
Mhm,
other
mhm.
story.
That is a whole nother story.
But it's true. And it hit me. I started to follow an account on Instagram, and she would post the same exact story, but a headline from the right and a headline from the left. And to see those two different headlines, it was just night and day. It was so
That's
different.
cool.
Not only that, but after the election happened, and I didn't like either candidate, to be perfectly honest. I wasn't a fan of either candidate. I felt like we were
No,
kind of screwed either way. Um, in
I voted
in
libertarian. I was
certain
like, I
areas,
can't.
right? In certain areas with either of them. I'm not just going to do a sweeping overarch in certain areas. But once Biden got elected, to see my news feed just completely drop. My news feed was full all the time, like my Apple News on my phone, all the time, of Trump this and Trump that and Trump this and Trump that. And then Biden falls up the stairs 3 times, walking up to Air Force One, and not a single peep out of the news on that. I'm like,
Mhm.
if Trump had done that, they would have been all over him like white on rice. So to
Yeah.
see my news like fall off when he got elected and things not get talked about, I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
Hold on.
We got a visit. All right.
Goodness. But yeah, it was just those headlines changing,
Mhm.
and like the things, like I listened to the first press conference he gave or something like that, and there were many times where I was like, wow, he does not, nobody, he went off on these tangents and he just like lost his train of thought. And that's been a huge thing with him, is like how he's so much older, how is his mental state, and he just went off on one of these little things and then like forgot what he was talking about at one point. And I was like, if Trump had done that, as much as I didn't
Yeah.
like most of the stuff that came out of his mouth half the time, if he had done that, the news would have been on him. You would have seen
Yep.
headlines everywhere, but then they didn't mention it, didn't say a word about it with Biden.
Yep.
And so I was just like, if people, and it's like, I hope people realize these things or start to see these things,
I don't think they do though, and it's so hard. Like I just it's like everybody's kind of hypnotized, or it's so hard. But
It's
so
hard to be
like,
somebody who like questions a lot of things. I don't
yeah.
feel like, and this goes back to like the whole topic of our conversation, living, feeling outcasted, is that we question a lot of things, and the majority of people I would say don't.
Yeah.
They don't. They just are like, okay, this is what they're telling, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is how I'm supposed to live, and this is how I'm supposed to be, and that's what's right and good. And it's like, well, no, if you lived 100 years ago, they would have been like, you question everything. I mean, God, I remember, and my mom still puts a damn piece of tape over the camera on her laptop. I'm kidding you not. But I mean, I remember you didn't give your personal information to anybody,
Mhm.
anybody.
Yeah.
You never gave out your social security number. That's your private information. And now
Yeah.
people are just willing to do it all for these, like, let's do vaccine
Mhm.
passports and we'll just give out all of our information to everybody. It's not a big deal. And it's like, you accept stuff on your phone that tracks you, and people are totally fine with that. But 20 years ago, 40 years ago, that was like, no, you don't do that. And it's
Yeah.
like, our generation doesn't remember that. I feel like a lot,
Or know it,
or
or
younger, our
think that,
generation and younger.
or they think you're crazy for thinking that way.
Right. Yeah. When that was totally how everybody lived 40 years ago.
And to be honest, I would probably be tracking right with those people of like, oh yeah, my mom and that generation, they're all crazy, like
I used to
paranoid.
track with that. I would be like, they don't want my information. They don't care about me. I'm like,
Mhm.
they do. They want you and your 75 other friends. And I mean, it's not just about you as an individual, it's about you as a collective with all your people. And they want to influence you as a group.
Yep.
And yeah, totally.
Mhm. So the other thing I thought we could hit on with this sort of feeling outcasted is the non-toxic living and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, because I think about like even just walking into someone's house and like fragrances, home fresh air fresheners. Uh, I don't know, like even like having to deal with like my ex-husband and having to like trying to influence him to not do certain things with, using fabric softener, or burning candles, and trying to explain to him why that's bad and things like that. And it goes back to the whole dating world too. Like if someone comes in smelling like bounce and Tide, like
Right.
no, like
It's hard. My mom has a boyfriend now and he still wears cologne, which I understand. He's 60 whatever years old, and my dad wore a lot of cologne, and I
my
we
mom getting in the car yesterday, and I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to breathe.
I know it's great, I just, now I know so much more, but people, and I think it gets back to the whole, until it happens to them, people a lot of times they think you're crazy.
Yep.
You're like, oh, you think that my laundry detergent or these dryer sheets are going to be an endocrine? Oh, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I'm like, except for I have this gut issue and I have all of these other things and I have, you know, depression and I have this and I had infertility. It's like, but it's almost like they don't realize those things are correlated and they're all connected, right?
Yeah. Or
And
like me personally, like I walk into a house and I literally like my whole throat will like dry up if there's fragrance in the
I
air.
get like stuffy and my nose starts to
Mhm.
water and stuff. Run.
Yep.
My nose starts
Mhm.
to water, Jessica.
You know.
My eyes start to water, my nose runs.
Yeah, I
And
get you.
it affects me a lot more than it used to because I've
Yep.
completely detoxed from that. And that gets back to that whole detox thing, like we were
Mhm.
talking about with sugar and foods and stuff. Give yourself 30 days to get that out of your home, and you'll see a huge difference when you come into contact with those things.
Yep. I remember, like, I didn't realize how strong those things were until I cut them out of my life. And then when I was around it, it was like, oh my God, like that is so walking past the aisle in the grocery store that
Yep.
has detergent, I like can't breathe.
Mhm.
But you get so used to it when you live in it all day long,
Yep.
that you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And
It
so,
dulls your like senses and stuff like that. And so
mhm.
people be like, oh, they'll like switch to oils, right? So they'll be like, oh, I'm getting rid of my candles and switching to oils and I can't smell them. I need it really strong. I'm like, well, give yourself some time because all those fragrances and other parabens and stuff in those products and candles have dulled your senses. So your senses need
Mhm.
time to like kind of come back to life in order
Yeah.
for you to actually notice, the
Yep.
difference.
Yep. You build up that tolerance or whatever to
Yep.
it. And like, honestly, oh my gosh, Tiffany, you would like scream. When I was dating Eric, my ex-husband, his mom literally would put 7 dryer sheets in a load of laundry. I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like,
I hate that.
could
When
you
we were
imagine?
when we were traveling, I was doing laundry in Texas at a campground, and a lady she just kept pulling them out, like 6 of them, and stuck them in her laundry. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you know what you're doing to yourself? Like, and then there'll even be times where we would do laundry on the road, and I would put something in the dryer, and from the residual effects of dryer sheets in the dryer, our clothes would have
Yeah, I
like
bet.
and I'm like, no, 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 no.
Oh, I would get clothes back from Eric that were Charlie's that had been washed in like regular detergent. And I'm like, I literally wouldn't wash it with my stuff because I
Mhm.
didn't want it to bleed onto the other clothes. But like it killed me. And that stuff doesn't, you could wash it like a million times and it's still there.
Yeah.
It oh, it drives me crazy.
And
But
we tell people these things and we share these things because we care. I don't share and try to educate people on these things because I think I'm better than anybody. I do it because I truly care and I want people to be
mm,
healthy. And I see what so many of my friends and family members have gone through and what they're exposing themselves to daily.
mhm,
And they don't realize that what they are doing could potentially have really long-term effects. It's like the toxins build up in our bodies and our liver and all of our kidneys, all of these things, our blood, they're trying to filter these things out constantly, but at some point it's going to be so overloaded that something's going to trigger something that you will really feel. And like when a lot of it was with my dad's cancer. And I was like, I
mhm,
look back over his life and a lot of it probably had to do with the war and being exposed to Agent Orange and stuff like that. But like the way my dad ate and the things that he wore and did, and he worked in a foundry for a long time. And so he was exposed to a lot of bad things. And your
mhm.
body can only process so much before it just gets overloaded, and
Yep.
something happens. And cancer is what happened to him. And, most cancers are, I think, what is it? 95% of cancer is caused by our external environment. There's very few like genetic
Well,
cancers.
if you ask me, I would say it's 100%, but you
Well,
know,
some people have like the gene
scientific
for breast
scientific
cancer.
backing. Yeah.
Yeah, like the BRCA1 or whatever that gene is for breast cancer. Um,
But then again, like, why is that gene mutated or whatever? I mean, somewhere
right.
down the line, it was something had affected it that, you know,
Well, and that gets back to the whole thing that we could talk about, whereas it's like you do something and then it's affecting your future generations.
yeah.
People don't realize that you expose yourself to certain things, like we were talking earlier about phthalates, about studies about phthalates and how it's reducing sperm count. In 40 years, men's sperm count has been reduced by 50% due to our exposure to phthalates, which is like plastics. But you don't think how it's going to take generations. And if we remove those plastics from our environment, it will take probably 2 to 3 generations for that to change. So we're affecting our future offspring with a lot of the things that we're doing and people are doing to their bodies nowadays. And so I always want to make sure people understand that, like, I share these things, not because I think I'm better than you, but I was where you were at one point. You know, I was where you were, and now I'm on this other side, and I realize how amazing it can be and how much better you can live and how much more my eyes are open and I see all of these things for what they are worth. And I just want to help other people get to that point too, because I don't want them to have to go through what I had to go through, like with my dad, you know, or my mom being really sick now and stuff like that. I don't want people to have to go through that kind of thing.
Yep. Or have your kid born with a genetic disorder or, you know, but, you know, the other thing that you mentioned earlier, that really hit home for me is feeling like you're crazy.
Yes.
You know, like, I think that's where it really, really hits home for me in this conversation is all these things that I'm doing because it's outside the current norm. You feel like a weirdo.
Yeah.
And people kind of think you're a weird, or at least it feels that way, that they think you're kind of crazy and weird. But what's so crazy about that is that we're actually getting back to how we were really intended. We're getting back to hundreds of years ago, the way people lived for millennium, you know, like, and so we're actually reverting back to our natural state, but we're looked at as crazy because we're in a minority. And that's just really hard to, I don't know, help to, that's where you really feel unaccepted or outcasted, and you don't know how to kind of bridge that together, you know? And so I guess that's like the real challenge, is trying to find a way to have these conversations with people. And hopefully maybe our podcast will start that conversation with some. But just, I guess I try to be as open as possible about the way I live, but I do this really bad thing, and I need to work on it, where I minimize what I'm doing to make other people feel comfortable. I make myself, I'll say I'm basically a weirdo. I say it all the time. I'm like, yeah, I'm the weirdo, or, you know, I'm crazy, you know, I'm the crazy hippie girl. And I got to stop doing that, because I am creating this already like mindset in that person that what I'm doing is crazy, instead of saying that this should be normal, that this is how we should all be striving to live, and working towards, and I'm continuing to work towards every day, living a healthier life, and learning more and more about how to achieve that. Because, you know, our health should be everyone's number one priority, because health is wealth. Like, you can have all the things in the world, but does it do you any good if you can't enjoy them? Like, if you don't have your health, you have nothing.
You don't. And it gets back to the taking your health into your own hands. We've outsourced our health to doctors, and we're just like, just tell me what to do and give me a drug for this and make it easy, because we live in a world now where everything is so easy and convenient, which is really what's going to end up being our total demise as a species. I swear to goodness. But it's, you know, we've outsourced our health and expect other people to tell us how to live. And okay, if you want me to tell you and help you how to live, I have no problem doing that, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to take some time for you to get there. But once you get there, I guarantee you will feel so much better.
And this is kind of what Tommy John was talking about that hit home for me the other day in one of his videos. But also, I just had this conversation with my cousin, who I did some nutritional work with. And she was like, you know, she asked me, do you have meal plans for your clients? And I'm like, no, I don't. And there's a reason for that. And that is, my job is to empower you with knowledge. My job is to help you see insight with what's going on in your life and help you help yourself. My job is not for me to hold your hand. I mean, to some degree, the accountability piece can be hand holding a little bit, that support. But at the end of the day, you have to do the work. You have to figure out what works for you. I don't know what works for you. I'm going to help you figure that out, but I can even give you the meal plan. And I understand that you think that that's what's going to help you get there, because she had said, I know for me, when I get home and I'm tired, I'm just going to go for the easy, convenient thing. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, even a meal plan isn't going to change that.
Right.
You still have to, with that meal plan, get to the store beforehand, have the foods prepped so that when you do get home, you can make those are convenient and not the junk food is convenient. You have to get the junk food out of your house. So the onus is on you. Yep. I can only do so much, which is give you the knowledge and insight and some tools. But at the end of the day, and that's the thing, is everybody just wants that magic pill. And that's the society that's been created. I don't fault people for this. Just like when I'm in the grocery store, I look at people's carts and it makes me sad. I don't judge. I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at the culture that's been created. I'm mad at the diet industry. I'm mad at big food. I'm not mad at that person because they're doing what they can with what they have and what they know.
Yep.
And it just makes me sad.
Yeah. You look at grocery stores nowadays and there's more space devoted to packaged foods than there is to whole foods. The meat department and the produce department is so small compared to the packaged food aisles, and it wasn't like that. I don't know, probably even 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, it wasn't even like that. And now that's what it is. And they just keep getting smaller and smaller, it seems like, but it's what people are taught and it's what they know. And I agree. I'm the same way I agree with you. I don't fault people. It is not their fault. It's what society has told us and what the government has told us. And it's just, we're kind of in this spiral right now where I feel like now is a great time because with everything going on with farming and agriculture and stuff, and we're not going to have a lot of growing seasons left. I feel like now we're kind of on this precipice where we're either at this tipping point where we're going to tip in the right direction and things are going to start changing, or we're going to tip in the wrong direction, and pretty soon we're going to be at a point of no return where I have great concern for our species. So yeah.
Oh, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Any last words?
Bad.
It is bad. Do you have any last words before we cut it?
No, I feel like we've kind of hit a lot in this.
I don't know how long this was. I will say one last thing. Jess and I live kind of on the extreme end of things, obviously. The way we live, I always don't want people to feel like they have to live exactly how we live to achieve health, right? It's like you find, like you were just saying with your cousin, you find what works for you, and if that's a middle ground, but you still feel better in the long run, that's awesome. I can teach you and help you with the basic things of removing some of the most harmful toxins out of your home and showing you what packaged foods you shouldn't eat, that kind of thing. And so I always want people to feel like, don't feel like you have to be as extreme as us. We do a lot of things to kind of just see where our health is going to lead us. I always talk about Kellen biohacking his sleep and doing, we are always trying new things, but that's just who we are. And I don't expect other people to feel like they have to be like us to achieve health, because health is a spectrum.
Well, I would say, so I agree. I agree with that, but then I also kind of have a different take on it, which is it's a progression. Yeah. So I didn't
like
get here.
Snowball, right? Like a snowball.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Once you start feeling better, you want to keep going in that direction. Yeah. And so that's what happened with me. Like, I was not like this out the gate. I mean, I kind of was because I did the GAPS diet, but that was mostly for Charlie. So for myself, it took a lot of time. I mean, I've been at this for 9 years. It took a lot of time to get to where I'm at now. And like I said earlier, it's continually changing. And so as you start just making incremental changes and in feeling better, you're going to probably want to continue that, but you have to start making those changes.
Yeah, it's the starting thing. And that's what I don't want people to feel like. I don't want them to feel overwhelmed, because it is a process, and we didn't just snap our fingers and one day we were just like this. It's like you said, it's been 9 years in the making, and me, it's been years in the making too. And so You know, we all have to start someplace, but it's like being willing to make those changes, which is what's important. So
yep, you gotta, in my nutritional work, it's kind of like you meet the person where they're at. So, you know, if they're in like a really bad place, like just making a couple of small adjustments can make a big difference. And so that's all it is just start making first step, like get healthier fats in your life, you know, like things like that. Start getting processed foods out of your life. But yeah, it's not gonna all come at once. There's no way.
No, it's too much.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode and you gleaned some insight from some of the things we said. If you have any questions, you can always comment on the podcast with the question. You can shoot us an email. You can find me on Instagram at tiffany.hubner, and you can find Jessica at
Real Food Revolutionary. I always get that wrong. It's my own name.
So funny.
Real Food Revolutionary.
And please leave us a 5-star rating. That helps more people see our podcast. Subscribe, share with your friends and family. Our goal is to try to kind of help more people out with this podcast. So we hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.